The soft light of the December morning filtered through the wide windows of the penthouse apartment, bathing the elegant furniture in golden hues. Leah adjusted the suitcase beside the bed for the third time that morning, unable to sleep properly. It was Christmas Eve, and this would be her last day here. 11 months had passed since she had first walked through the door of this apartment, answering a job ad that would change her life completely. At the time, it was just another professional opportunity. A chance to use her specialization in special education on a challenging case. But, now looking at the walls that had witnessed so many moments of triumph and tenderness, Leah felt her heart ache in a way she hadn't imagined possible. She walked to the window and watched New York City waking up below. The city was bustling even on a holiday, with its flashing lights and the constant movement of the avenues. So different from Maple Creek, her hometown in rural Vermont, where the pace was slower and her family was waiting for her. The dream job she had accepted months ago finally had a start date. January. Right after New Year's, she would take over as the head of curriculum at a specialized school in her city, close to her mother, her father, her siblings. It was everything she had ever wanted. So, why did leaving feel so wrong? A soft sound from the hallway interrupted her thoughts. Leah knew that noise. It was the small, hesitant footsteps of Sophia, the 7-year-old girl she cared for. Quickly, she opened the door to the guest room where she stayed and found the child standing in the hallway, still in her pajamas, clutching her worn-out stuffed rabbit. Sophia's brown eyes were wide, and even in the dim light, Leah could see the worry etched on her delicate little face. Leah knelt to the girl's level and opened her arms. Sophia ran into them, squeezing herself against her chest with a surprising strength for someone so small. There were no words. There never were. Sophia hadn't spoken since the accident that took her mother a year ago. Selective mutism, the doctors diagnosed, a deep trauma that had locked her in a world of silence. But Leah had learned to hear everything the girl didn't say. Every gesture, every expression, every glance carried universes of meaning. "Good morning, my love," Leah whispered, stroking Sophia's dark hair. "Today is a special day, isn't it? It's Christmas Eve." Sophia pulled back a little and made the sign for Christmas in ASL, one of the many things Leah had taught her in recent months. Sign language had been a fundamental bridge between them. Leah smiled and repeated the sign, then made the one for breakfast. The girl hesitated, her eyes filling with tears. She knew. Even without anyone having to say it, Sophia knew that this was their last day together. "Let's make a special breakfast, okay?" Leah stood up, holding out her hand to the girl. Sophia took her hand, but her grip was tighter than usual, as if she feared Leah might disappear at any moment. Together they walked down the wide hallway of the apartment, past expensive paintings and designer furniture that Leah had never imagined having in her own home. The difference between her world and this one had always been stark. She was a middle-class educator from a small town. Edward was the CEO of one of the country's largest tech companies. Worlds that should never have crossed, but that fate had brought together, because of a tragedy, and a little girl who needed help. When they reached the large modern kitchen, Leah was surprised. Edward was already there, sitting at the dining table, still dressed in his sleepwear, a set of grey pants and a t-shirt that made him look more human, more approachable than the impeccable suits he always wore. He was looking at his phone, but an untouched cup of coffee sat in front of him. When he heard them enter, he looked up, and Leah noticed something different in his expression. There was a vulnerability there that she rarely saw. "Good. Morning," he said, his voice softer than usual. "You're up early." Edward was 42, with dark hair starting to show a few grey strands at the temples and a posture that always conveyed authority and control. But that morning, he seemed different. There was a tension in his shoulders, an uncertainty in his eyes that Leah couldn't quite decipher. "Good morning, Mr. Edward," Leah replied, maintaining the formality that had always existed between them, even after almost a year. "Sophia woke up early today." Sophia let go of Leah's hand and ran to her father, climbing into his lap with her usual familiarity. Edward welcomed her, kissing the top of her head, but his eyes remained on Leah for a moment longer than necessary. "I've cleared my schedule today," he said suddenly, surprising Leah. "All the meetings, all the calls. I want to be here. For the last day." There was something in the way he said last day that made Leah's stomach churn. It wasn't just sadness. There was an intensity there, an emotion she couldn't name. "That will mean a lot to Sophia," Leah replied, looking away and starting to prepare breakfast. She opened the refrigerator, taking out eggs, fruit, bread. Her hands moved on autopilot, a routine she knew by heart. "She can spend the day with you. It will be special for her." "And for me too," Edward added, his voice carrying a weight that made Leah pause. "I mean spending the day with both of you, if it's not an imposition." Leah turned to look at him, surprised. In 11 months, Edward rarely stayed home during the day. He left early and came back late, completely absorbed by his company. On weekends, he tried to make up for it, but even then there were always calls, emails, emergencies that pulled him away. Leah understood. He was trying to maintain the empire he had built, especially after losing his wife. Work was his refuge, his way of coping with the pain. "Of course it's not an imposition," Leah replied, turning back to the stove. "I think Sophia will love it." She made pancakes, Sophia's favorite, while Edward remained at the table with his daughter on his lap. The girl played with the buttons on her father's shirt, lost in her own silent world. Every now and then Leah would glance back and see them there, father and daughter, and her heart would ache again. She loved them. She loved that little girl as if she were her own. And Edward. Well, Edward was a territory far too complicated for her to explore. When breakfast was ready, the three of them sat at the table. Leah had gone all out. Pancakes with chocolate syrup, fresh fruit cut into the shapes of stars and Christmas trees, fresh orange juice. Sophia clapped her hands when she saw the presentation, and for the first time that morning, a genuine smile lit up her face. Edward watched everything with an expression that Leah couldn't fully decipher. "The new nanny arrives the day after tomorrow," Edward said suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence. "The agency assured me she's excellent, has experience with children who've been through trauma." Leah felt a lump form in her throat. She knew a replacement was coming. It was necessary. Edward couldn't take care of Sophia alone, not with the impossible routine he kept. But hearing it said aloud made it all more real, more final. "I'm sure she'll be great," Leah replied, forcing a smile. "Sophia is a special girl. Anyone will fall in love with her." Sophia stopped eating and looked at Leah with those huge, expressive eyes. Then, slowly, she made a sign in ASL. The sign for stay. "Please, stay." Leah felt tears prick her eyes, but held them back. She had already explained it to Sophia several times over the past few weeks. She had to leave. She had a new job waiting. She had her family. She had a life somewhere else. "You know I have to go, my love," Leah replied gently, signing as she spoke. "But I'll visit, I promise, and you can call me whenever you want." Sophia shook her head vehemently, her eyes filling with tears. She climbed down from her chair and ran to her room, leaving Leah and Edward alone at the table. The silence that settled was heavy, laden with unsaid things. Edward cleared his throat. "She's been like this for days," he said quietly. "Ever since she understood you're really leaving. I tried to talk to her, but—" He paused, running a hand through his hair in a gesture of frustration. "You reach her in a way I never could." "You're her father," Leah said softly. "She loves you. It's just a difficult phase. She'll adapt." The words sounded hollow even to her own ears. They both knew it wasn't that simple. Sophia had formed a bond with Leah that went beyond the role of a nanny. She was the mother figure the girl had lost. She was the one who understood her, who had infinite patience, who knew exactly how to calm her when the memories of the accident returned in nightmares. "Leah," Edward began, and there was something different in his voice. He rarely called her by her first name. It was always Miss Leah or just Leah, followed by a formality. But now the way he said her name carried an intimacy that made her look at him. He hesitated, as if searching for the right words. "I wanted to thank you. For everything. For what you've done for Sophia. For what you've done for us." "I was just doing my job," Leah replied quickly, getting up and starting to clear the plates. But Edward reached out and lightly touched her arm, making her stop. The touch was gentle, but it sent an electric current through her entire body. She looked at him, surprised. "It wasn't just a job," Edward said, his dark eyes fixed on hers. "You know that. You brought life back into this house for her, for me." Before Leah could respond, before she could process what those words truly meant, they heard small footsteps returning. Sophia appeared at the kitchen doorway, holding a book, her favorite book, the story of the princess and the secret garden, which Leah read to her almost every night. The girl held the book out to Leah with that pleading look she knew so well. It was a silent, yet eloquent request. "Read to me, one more time, for the last time." Leah took the book, feeling the weight of the moment. How many times had they read that story together? 50, 100. Every reading was special, each one bringing a new layer of connection between them. "Let's go to the living room," Leah suggested, and Sophia immediately took her hand. Edward followed them, and Leah noticed he hadn't picked up his phone. Normally, even in the rare moments he was home, he was always connected, always available for his company. But today was different. He had truly cancelled everything. That touched her in a way she didn't want to admit. In the living room, with its expansive windows offering a panoramic view of New York City, Leah settled onto the sofa. Sophia immediately snuggled up beside her, fitting perfectly against her like a puzzle piece. Edward sat in the armchair nearby, watching the two of them with a thoughtful expression. Leah opened the book to the first page and began to read, her soft voice filling the room. Once upon a time, there was a princess who lived in a very large castle, but she felt very lonely. The girl knew the story by heart, but never tired of it. Leah continued, narrating the princess's journey to discover a secret garden where the flowers talked and the birds sang songs that healed sadness. It was a metaphor she and Sophia had created together. The secret garden was the safe place inside Sophia's mind, where she could go when things got too difficult. As she read, Leah stroked Sophia's hair, feeling the girl gradually relax against her. From time to time, she would look up and find Edward watching, not the book, but the two of them together. There was something in his gaze that made her feel exposed, vulnerable, as if he could see through all the barriers she had built, all the rational arguments she used to convince herself that leaving was the right decision. When Leah reached the end of the story, where the princess finally found other people who loved her secret garden and no longer felt alone, she realized that Sophia had fallen asleep. The girl's breathing was soft and regular, her little face peaceful. Leah closed the book carefully, not wanting to wake her. For a long moment, no one moved. Edward continued to look at them, and Leah held Sophia in her arms, memorizing the moment. "She trusts you completely," Edward said finally, his voice low so as not to wake the girl. "Ever since Camilla—" He stopped, and Leah saw the pain cross his face. He rarely mentioned his wife. "Since we lost Camilla, Sophia hasn't gotten close to anyone like this, only you." "Children are resilient," Leah replied softly. "She'll form new bonds. She'll be okay." But as she said it, she held Sophia a little tighter, as if she could protect her from all the pain in the world. Edward stood up from the armchair and, to Leah's surprise, sat on the sofa next to them. He was closer now, close enough that she could feel the warmth of his body, the faint scent of his cologne. "And you?" Edward asked, turning to look at her directly. "Will you be okay?" The question caught her off guard. No one asked her that. She was the caregiver, the strong one, the one who always had everything under control. To be asked about her own feelings, especially by Edward, completely disarmed her. "I'm going to miss this," Leah admitted, her voice almost a whisper. "A lot. But it's the right thing to do. I have a career, a family waiting. I can't stay here forever being a nanny." The words sounded harsher than she intended, as if she were trying to convince herself more than him. Edward nodded slowly, but his eyes never left her face. "A nanny," he repeated, and there was something strange in his tone. "Is that how you see yourself? Just as a nanny?" Leah felt her heart race. What else would I be, Mr. Edward? She tried to maintain the formality, the safe distance she had always kept between them, but Edward was so close now and his eyes were so intense. Before he could answer, before that moment could develop into something Leah wasn't sure she was ready to face, they heard the front door open. Edward moved away quickly, getting up from the sofa. It was Mrs. Rose, the housekeeper who came 3 times a week. She entered the living room carrying grocery bags, her presence a welcome break in the tension. Good morning, Mrs. Rose chirped happily, then stopped when she saw them. Oh, did Sophia fall asleep? The poor dear, she's been crying so much these days, the little one. She knows. Her Leah is leaving. Mrs. Rose was a kind, talkative 60-year-old woman who had worked for Edward for over 10 years. She had known Camilla, witnessed the family's grief, and was now witnessing another farewell. I'll put her in her room, Leah said, standing up carefully with Sophia in her arms. The girl stirred a little but didn't wake, adjusting her head on Leah's shoulder. Edward immediately stepped forward. Let me help. She's heavy. But Leah shook her head. I've got her. I want to do this one last time. She carried Sophia down the hall to the girl's room. It was a large room, decorated in shades of pink and lilac with shelves full of books and toys. Leah gently laid Sophia on the bed, covering her with the soft duvet. The girl turned on her side, hugging her stuffed rabbit, and Leah stood there for a moment, just watching. How had this child become so important to her? When exactly had her heart completely surrendered? When she returned to the living room, Edward was waiting for her, and there was something different in his posture. He seemed nervous, almost anxious. Mrs. Rose had gone to the kitchen, and they were alone again. Leah, there's something I want to show you, he said. Something Sophia and I prepared. He went to a closet and took out a large, flat, wrapped gift. We wanted to give this to you today. Leah approached, curious and moved. She unwrapped the gift carefully and felt tears spring to her eyes instantly. It was a photo album, but not just any album. It was handmade, with a fabric cover decorated with colorful buttons and ribbons. Every page was filled with photographs from the last 11 months. Sophia at the park laughing as Leah pushed, her on the swing. The 3 of them having a picnic in Central Park. Sophia learning ASL, her expression focused and determined. Leah and Sophia baking together, both with flour on their faces. There were hundreds of photos, each capturing a moment Leah didn't even know had been recorded. And between the photos, there were drawings by Sophia, little notes, preserved memories. An entire page was dedicated to the day Sophia made her first sign to Leah. Another to the first time she smiled after months of not smiling. At the end of the album there was a photo of the 3 of them together, taken by Mrs. Rose a few weeks earlier. They were on the sofa laughing at something Leah could no longer remember, and they looked exactly like what Mrs. Rose always insisted they were. A family. Edward, Leah whispered, holding the album to her chest. I have no words. It's the most beautiful gift I've ever received. He took a step forward, and suddenly he was too close again. We wanted you to remember, he said, his voice hoarse with emotion. We wanted you to know how much these months meant to us. How much you mean? Leah looked up and her eyes met his. There were so many things unsaid between them, so many emotions so carefully guarded. You mean so much to me too, she admitted. More than you should, more than is wise. Edward raised his hand, as if to touch her face, but then he hesitated, letting it fall again. There was an internal war happening inside him, Leah could see. Something he wanted to say, but couldn't. I have another gift for you, he said finally, taking a step back. I mean for Sophia, but it's something special. Can you come with me? He led her to the apartment's balcony, which had a stunning view of the city, and there, in a corner that had been empty yesterday, was a Christmas tree. It wasn't huge, but it was perfect, decorated with soft lights and delicate ornaments, with a golden star on top. Underneath it were a few wrapped boxes. We never had a tree since Camilla passed, Edward explained, his voice thick with emotion. I couldn't. It was too painful. But Sophia told me, through the signs you taught her, that she wanted a tree this year. For you. So you could have one last Christmas with us. Leah felt the tears roll freely now. The beauty of that gesture, the meaning behind it, was too much to contain. "I helped her pick out every ornament," Edward continued, lightly touching one of the decorations. "She wanted each one to mean something. See this one." He pointed to a book-shaped ornament. "It's for the story you read together. And this one, an ice skate ornament, is for the day you went skating, and Sophia fell and laughed for the first time in months. Each ornament was a memory, each one proof that those 11 months had left indelible marks on all of them." "Edward, I don't know what to say," Leah managed to say through her tears, wiping her face with trembling hands. "This is all... it's so special, so beautiful. You didn't have to do any of this." But as she said the words, she knew that yes, they had to. It was their way of saying goodbye, of trying to capture what couldn't be said with simple words. Edward moved closer to her, and this time he didn't hesitate. He placed his hands on her shoulders gently, forcing her to look at him. "Leah, I need to tell you something I've been trying to say for weeks, but..." He stopped, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "I don't even know where to begin." His touch on her shoulders burned, even through the fabric of her blouse. Leah knew she should pull away, maintain the professional distance that had always been her golden rule. But she couldn't move. Before Edward could continue, they heard the sound of little footsteps coming from the living room. Sophia had woken up and was looking for them. Edward dropped his hands, and the moment was lost. The girl appeared on the balcony, still sleepy, rubbing her eyes. When she saw the Christmas tree, her eyes widened, and she ran towards it, jumping with joy. She made quick signs to Leah. "Did you like it? It's for you." "I love it, my love," Leah replied, kneeling beside Sophia and hugging her. "It's the most beautiful tree I've ever seen. You and your daddy are so special." Sophia snuggled against her, and for a moment the three of them stood there around the tree, wrapped in a bubble of affection that seemed suspended in time. If only they could freeze this moment, Leah thought. If only the world would stop spinning long enough for her to understand what she truly wanted. The rest of the morning passed in a haze of conflicting emotions. Edward had changed out of his sleepwear into jeans and a casual shirt, something Leah rarely saw him wear. Without the formal suit, without the corporate armor, he seemed more approachable, more human. They spent time on the balcony, Sophia playing with her toys while Edward and Leah talked. It was surprising how naturally the conversation flowed between them when he wasn't tense or rushing to a meeting. "You know," Edward said suddenly, watching Sophia build a tower of blocks, "I've started learning ASL." Leah turned to him, surprised. "Really? When? Why?" He gave a half smile, almost shy. "You always said I should, that it would be important for Sophia to have that connection with me. So I started a few weeks ago, hired a private tutor. He made a few basic signs, still a bit clumsy, but clearly practiced." "I love you, Sophia." The girl looked up, surprised and delighted. She left her blocks and ran too, her father climbing into his lap and making her own signs. "I love you too, Daddy." Edward hugged her tightly, and Leah saw tears in his eyes. It was a moment of deep connection between father and daughter, something she had always wished to see, but which also made her feel a pang of pain. They were getting closer, learning to communicate better. Perhaps her departure was truly the push Edward needed to dedicate himself more to his daughter. "You're doing an amazing job," Leah said sincerely. "Sophia needs this. She needs to know she can communicate with you in every way." Edward looked at her over Sophia's head. "I should have done this months ago. You always knew what was best for her. I was so lost after Camilla, so focused on keeping everything running that I forgot what really mattered." It was the first time Edward had truly opened up about his feelings since losing his wife. Leah knew a little about Camilla through photos and the few mentions Mrs. Rose made. She was a doctor, a vibrant and dedicated woman who had met Edward in college. The car accident that took her from the family had been a devastating shock. Edward had thrown himself into work, and Sophia had retreated into her silence. And there was Leah, a year later, about to leave and let them navigate these unknown waters again. As noon approached, Edward surprised everyone by announcing he would make lunch. Leah and Sophia followed him to the kitchen, incredulous. "You're going to cook?" Leah asked, unable to hide the astonishment in her voice. Edward smiled, and it was a genuine smile that completely transformed his face. "Don't get too excited. My culinary skills are limited, but I thought we could do something together, like a family." The word family echoed in the kitchen, carrying immense weight. Sophia made the sign for family, looking from Leah to Edward and back, her little face hopeful. Leah felt her heart tighten. She knew she shouldn't let Sophia think of them that way. It wasn't fair to the girl to create expectations that couldn't be met. But when she looked at Edward and saw the expression on his face, that mix of hope and fear, she couldn't break the moment's spell. They decided to make a simple pasta spaghetti with homemade tomato sauce. Edward proved to be surprisingly competent at chopping vegetables, though he admitted it was something he hadn't done in years. Leah guided him while Sophia helped stir the sauce, standing on a stool next to the stove. The kitchen filled with laughter when Edward tried to toss the spaghetti into the pot, and some of the hot water splashed, making him jump back dramatically. "You're the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company, but you're afraid of hot water," Leah teased, and Edward laughed, a sound she realized she rarely heard. "I have many talents, but cooking is definitely not one of them. Camilla always said I could burn water if I tried." The mention of his late wife brought a moment of silence, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was a gentle memory, a way of keeping her present. "She would love to see you doing this," Leah said softly. "Trying. Making an effort for Sophia." Edward stopped stirring the sauce and looked at her. "You think so? You never met her, but—" He hesitated. "You remind me of her in some ways. The dedication, the patience, the way you love Sophia unconditionally." Leah didn't know how to respond to that. It was an immense compliment, but also painful. She could never replace Camilla. She should never try. When they finally sat down to eat, the lunch was delicious despite Edward's doubts. The table was set carefully, with folded napkins and even a lit candle in the center. It was an obvious effort to make the day special, and Leah appreciated every detail. During the meal, Edward did something extraordinary. He started telling stories about Camilla, voluntarily, without prompts, without the paralyzing pain that usually prevented him from speaking about her. "She had this way of lighting up any room," he said, twirling spaghetti on his fork. "When I met her in college, she was organizing a blood drive. She convinced half the campus to participate. It was impossible to say no to her." Sophia was listening intently, her eyes shining. It was clear she loved hearing about her mother, even if she couldn't express it verbally. "One day," Edward continued, looking at his daughter, "your mother and I went to an amusement park. She was so scared of roller coasters, but she pretended she wasn't to impress me. She got on the ride with me and was pale the whole time. When we got off, she said it had been wonderful, but I knew she was lying. Years later, she admitted she almost threw up." He laughed, and Sophia laughed too in her silent way, her shoulders shaking with joy. "She would love how much you've grown, Sophia," Edward said, and his voice softened. "She would be so proud of how brave you are, of how you're learning to communicate in new ways, and she would love Leah too, for taking care of you, of us." The moment was so intimate, so charged with meaning, that Leah had to look away. She was intruding on something sacred, on memories of a family she wasn't a part of. But then Edward reached across the table and lightly touched her hand. "Thank you," he said simply, "for letting me talk about her, for not being jealous or uncomfortable, for understanding." Leah turned her hand, briefly intertwining her fingers with his before pulling away. "Camilla is a part of who you are. I would never try to erase that. She should be remembered, celebrated." After lunch, as they washed the dishes together, Edward's phone started to ring. It was a work call. Leah could see from the name, on the screen. He looked at the phone, then at her, and simply declined the call. "They can wait," he said firmly. "Nothing is more important than today. Nothing is more important than being here with you two." The gesture, simple as it was, meant more than 1,000 words. Edward was choosing. For the first time in a year, He was putting his family, his daughter, above his corporate responsibilities. He was present, completely and utterly present. And Leah realized that she had some role in this, that somehow her presence over the past months had shown him what truly mattered. The afternoon arrived with a cloudy sky that threatened rain, typical for December in New York. After the dishes were put away and the kitchen was clean, Sophia pulled Leah by the hand towards the living room, making excited signs. She wanted to make Christmas cookies, a tradition they had started together in the previous weeks. Leah looked at Edward, expecting him to return to his office or busy himself with some task, but he simply rolled up his shirt sleeves and said, "Can I help?" The scene that unfolded in the kitchen that afternoon was something Leah would cherish forever. The three of them together, making cookies shaped like stars, trees, and snowmen. Sophia was radiant, with flour on her nose and cheeks, her silent laughter filling the room with joy. Edward tried to follow Leah's instructions, but clearly had no knack for dough. His cookies came out lopsided, broken, but he kept trying with a determination that was both comical and touching. "I think baking is definitely not my thing," he admitted, after his third snowman fell apart. Sophia took his hand and made some signs, patient as a teacher. She was teaching her father, showing him how to press the cookie cutter properly. Edward followed her instructions, and when he finally managed to make a perfect cookie, Sophia clapped her hands and jumped for joy. Seeing father and daughter interact like that, communicating through the signs Leah had taught them, was both wonderful and painful. As the cookies baked, filling the apartment with the comforting aroma of cinnamon and vanilla, the three of them sat at the kitchen table to decorate them. Leah had prepared colored icing and various sprinkles. Sophia dived right into the task, creating cookies with vibrant colors and designs that only made sense to her. Edward was more meticulous, trying to make perfect patterns, but his large fingers weren't made for delicate work. "Just let it flow," Leah encouraged him, lightly touching his arm. "It doesn't have to be perfect. The important thing is to have fun." Edward looked at her, and there was something in his eyes that made her heart race. "You always know what to say," he murmured. "You always know how to make everything seem lighter. How do you do that?" Leah looked away, concentrating on her own cookie. "It's just practice, years of working with children. You learn not to take everything so seriously." But she knew it was more than that. There was something about this family, about this man and this girl, that brought out the best in her. She felt more alive, more needed, more herself than at any other time in her life. "Leah," Edward began, and there was a seriousness in his voice that made her look at him. "I need to tell you something important, before it's too late." Leah's heart began to pound in her chest. She knew this moment was coming, could feel the tension building throughout the day. But before Edward could continue, the doorbell rang. It was Mrs. Rose, who had gone out shopping and was now returning. The housekeeper entered the kitchen, carrying more bags, and stopped at the sight of the scene. The three of them around the table, covered in flour and icing, laughing and creating memories. A huge smile spread across Mrs. Rose's face. "Look at this beautiful family," she said fondly. "You all look so happy together. It would be so wonderful if this could last forever." Mrs. Rose's words fell like a bomb in the room. Sophia looked at Leah with those huge, hopeful eyes. Edward tensed, his jaw tight, and Leah felt her heart break a little more. "Mrs. Rose," she said gently, trying to keep her voice steady, "I'm leaving tomorrow. We talked about this. You know I can't stay." Mrs. Rose set the bags on the counter and approached, placing a hand on Leah's shoulder. "I know, my dear, I know. But look." She gestured towards Edward and Sophia. "Look what you've brought to this house. This house was dead after we lost Camilla. Mr. Edward working day and night, running from the pain. Sophia locked in her silence. And you came and brought life back. You brought love back." "Mrs. Rose," Edward interrupted, his voice sharp, "that's not fair. Leah has her own life, her own choices." But the housekeeper shook her head. "I know, Mr. Edward, I know. But sometimes the best things in life aren't rational choices. They're choices of the heart." She looked directly at Leah. You love this girl, and more than that, you love this family. I see it in your eyes every day." Leah felt the tears welling up. It wasn't fair for her feelings to be exposed like this, for her carefully constructed defenses to be torn down. "Mrs. Rose, please," she whispered, "don't make this any harder than it already is. I have a job waiting. I have responsibilities. I can't just throw everything away for—" She stopped, unable to finish the sentence. "For what?" Mrs. Rose pressed. "For love? For a chance at real happiness?" The silence that followed was deafening. Sophia looked from one adult to another, confused and frightened by the tension. Edward was pale, his fists clenched on the table. Leah stood up abruptly, needing space, needing to breathe. "I'm going to clean the guest room," she said, her voice cold and controlled. "I need to finish packing." She left the kitchen quickly, before anyone could see her fall apart. In the room, Leah sat on the bed, hugging her knees to her chest. Mrs. Rose's words echoed in her mind. "You love this family." It was true. God, it was so painfully true. She loved Sophia as if the girl were her own daughter. And Edward. Her feelings for Edward were complex and frightening. He was a millionaire, a powerful CEO. She was a middle-class educator from a small town. How could that possibly work? How could she abandon her dreams, her carefully planned career, for a man who might just be confusing gratitude with something more? Leah didn't realize how much time had passed when she heard a soft knock on the door. It was Edward. "Can I come in?" She quickly wiped her face, trying to compose herself. "Come in." Edward entered, closing the door behind him. He looked exhausted, as if he were carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. He sat in the chair near the bed, maintaining a respectful distance. "I'm sorry about what Mrs. Rose said," he began. "She had no right to put you in that position." But Leah shook her head. "She was just being honest, and maybe someone needed to be. We've been dancing around this all day, Edward, maybe all week, all month, pretending that tomorrow isn't coming, that I'm not really leaving." Edward leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "What do you want me to say, Leah? That I want you to stay? That the thought of you leaving is killing me inside? That I don't know how I'm going to explain to Sophia that you just disappeared from her life?" His voice was thick with emotion, each word coming out like a torn confession. "Because all of that is true, all of that, and more." Leah felt her heart race. "Edward, you can't say these things. You can't do this to me. I have a job waiting, a life planned. I can't just—" "But why not?" Edward interrupted, standing up and moving closer. "Why can't you? What's tying you to this decision? Is it the job? Is it the money? Because I can solve that. I can make it worth your while. Financially." "It's not about money," Leah exclaimed, standing up as well. "Do you think I care about money? Edward, I don't belong in your world. I don't know how to be a part of this life of luxury, these penthouse apartments, these enormous responsibilities. I'm just a simple girl from a small town who takes care of children. How could this possibly work?" Edward took another step forward, and now they were only inches apart. "You're not just that. You were never just that. You're the woman who brought my daughter back to life, who taught me how to be a father again, who showed me there's still color in the world even after so much gray." He raised his hand, hesitant, and gently touched her face. "You're the woman I've fallen in love with, Leah, completely, irrevocably." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Leah knew she should step back, maintain her professional distance, but she couldn't move. When Edward leaned in, when his lips almost touched hers, she didn't stop him. The kiss was soft, hesitant at first, as if they were both testing unknown waters, but then it deepened, all the repressed emotions of months overflowing at once. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathless. Leah rested her forehead against his, trying to process what had just happened. "Edward," she whispered, "this doesn't change anything. I still have to leave. I can't throw away everything I've built for—" "For what?" Edward repeated, his voice hoarse. "Tell me one real reason. One reason that isn't fear." Leah pulled away, hugging herself. "Because you don't really love me, Edward. You're confusing gratitude with love. You're confusing what I did for Sophia with feelings for me. And one day, when the dust settles, you'll realize that and you'll regret it. And I will have given up everything for something that wasn't real." Edward was silent for a long moment, processing Leah's words. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm but firm. "You're wrong. Completely wrong. But I can't convince you of that with words, can I? You've already decided you know what I feel better than I do myself." He walked to the door but stopped before leaving. "Come. There's something I want to show you. Please." Leah hesitated, but something in his voice made her follow him. Edward led her to his office, a place she rarely entered. It was an impressive room with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a massive mahogany desk, and windows that offered a panoramic view of the city. But what caught her attention was the drafting table in the corner, covered with papers and blueprints. Edward approached it and picked up a folder, handing it to Leah. "Open it," he said simply. Leah opened the folder and was speechless. They were architectural plans, dozens of them. Blueprints for a house. Not an apartment, but a real house with a garden and space for children to play. There were notes. In the margins, carefully thought-out details. A bedroom with shelves for children's books, a music room, an art studio. Every detail seemed designed for a family, for a different life than the one Edward led now. "I started this 3 months ago," Edward explained, his voice low, "when I realized I was falling in love with you, when I started imagining a different life, a life where I wasn't just a work-obsessed executive, but a present father, a man who could have a real family." He pointed to one of the drawings. "Look at the location, it's in Maple Creek." Leah felt her heart pound. "What?" Edward nodded. "My company is opening a branch there. I planned it. I've been working on it for the past few months. A smaller, more focused operation that I can manage with less travel and more time at home. I was going to tell you today, I was going to ask you to consider staying not here in New York, but there, near your family, near everything you love." Leah couldn't process what she was hearing. "You did all this? For me?" Edward moved closer to her, taking her hands. "For us. For a chance at something real. I'm not confusing anything, Leah. I know exactly what I feel, and I know it's scary. Believe me, I know. After Camilla, I swore I'd never let anyone in again, that it would be safer to be alone, focused only on protecting Sophia. But you changed everything." Before Leah could respond, they heard small footsteps in the hallway. It was Sophia looking for them. Edward quickly put the folder away, and they both left the office. The girl was waiting for them in the living room, holding a small wrapped box. She looked at Leah, with those big, expressive eyes holding out the gift. It was clear she had chosen this moment to give the present she had prepared. "For me?" Leah asked, kneeling beside Sophia. The girl nodded vigorously, pushing the little box into her hands. Leah opened it carefully, removing the colorful paper that Sophia had clearly wrapped herself with crooked ribbons and an excess of tape. Inside was a small, delicate, handmade music box, decorated with colored beads glued on irregularly, but full of love. Leah turned the key on the side, and a soft melody began to play. It was the lullaby she always sang to Sophia before bed. "My love," Leah whispered, hugging the girl tightly. "It's the most beautiful gift I've ever received. How did you make this?" Sophia made quick signs, explaining that Edward had helped her find the melody and assemble the box. It was a project that had taken them weeks to complete, working in secret whenever Leah wasn't around. Edward approached, pulling something from his pocket. "And I have something for you too," he said, handing her an envelope. Leah opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a handmade Christmas card with drawings by Sophia, but also a message written in Edward's handwriting. She began to read, and tears immediately sprang to her eyes. "Dear Leah," the message read, 11 months ago, you came into our lives as a professional hired to do a job, but you became so much more than that. You became the light that brightens our days, the patience that teaches us, the love that heals us. Sophia smiles because of you. She plays, learns, grows because of you. And I started living again because of you. You taught me that it's possible to love again, that I'm not betraying Camilla's memory by opening my heart. You showed me that life goes on and that it can be beautiful. Thank you is not enough to express our gratitude. You will always have a place in our hearts, no matter where the future takes us. With all our love, Edward and Sophia. Along with the card were 2 plane tickets, return tickets to New York City, open, valid for any date in the next 12 months. So you can visit us whenever you want, Edward explained, so you know you'll always have a place here. You'll always be welcome, you'll always be a part of us. Leah couldn't speak. The emotion was too much, every gift, every word, every gesture of that day breaking her down a little more. Sophia clung to her, and Edward joined the hug, the 3 of them forming a tight circle of affection and farewell. How long they stood like that, Leah didn't know. It could have been minutes or hours. Time seemed to have lost its meaning. When they finally separated, Leah's phone buzzed. It was a message from Marianne, her friend from Maple Creek, who was coming to pick her up. Leaving now, I'll be there in about 2 hours. Get your stuff ready, we've got a long drive ahead. Reality hit Leah like a bucket of cold water. 2 hours. In 2 hours, all of this would be over. She would leave this apartment, this girl, this man, and go back to her planned life. I need to finish packing, she said, her voice sounding distant even to her own ears. My friend is coming to get me. Sophia signed frantically, her eyes filling with tears. Don't go, please, don't go. Leah hugged her again, feeling her own heart break. I have to. My love, but I'll come back to visit. I promise I'll call every day. You can send me messages whenever you want. But Sophia wasn't convinced. She clung to Leah with a desperate strength, as if she could keep her there by sheer will. Edward had to intervene gently, taking his daughter in his arms. Sophia, he said in signs while speaking aloud. Leah needs to live her life. We have to let her go, even if it hurts. Even if we don't want to, because we love her, and loving means wanting what's best for someone, even when it means letting them go. Edward's words were wise and mature, but Leah could see the pain in his eyes, could hear the tension in his voice. He was being strong for his daughter, but he was hurting just as much as she was. Leah went up to the guest room and finished packing her suitcase. She folded each piece of clothing mechanically, not really processing what she was doing. Her eyes fell on the picture frame on the bedside table. It was a photo of the 3 of them, taken at the park a few weeks earlier. They were laughing, Sophia in the middle holding both their hands. They looked like a family. Sophia appeared at the door watching Leah pack. She entered the room and picked up the picture frame, holding it out to Leah. She made clear signs. Leave your picture to save your spot, to remember you'll come back. Leah felt a sob catch in her throat. She took the photo and carefully placed it among her clothes in the suitcase. I'll take it with me, she said gently, but I'll give you another picture of me for you to keep, okay? She took her phone and snapped a selfie with Sophia, then had Edward print it. When the photo was ready, she placed it in the frame and returned it to the bedside table. See? Now you have a picture of me here, to remember that I'm always thinking of you. Sophia hugged the frame to her chest, and the tears finally began to roll down her face. They were silent tears, like everything about Sophia, but no less powerful. The 2 hours passed far too quickly. Soon Leah was coming down the stairs with her suitcase, her heart as heavy as lead. Edward and Sophia were waiting for her in the living room. Mrs. Rose was there too, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. The farewell had arrived. There was no more delaying, no more pretending this moment wouldn't come. Leah looked around the apartment one last time, memorizing every detail. The wide windows, the Christmas tree they had set up for her, the cookies still arranged on the kitchen table. Everything seemed suspended in a perfect moment that was about to shatter. Leah was about to grab the handle of her suitcase when Edward raised a hand. Wait, he said, his voice carrying an urgency she couldn't ignore. Before you go, can I show you something? One last thing, please. She hesitated, feeling the weight of the moment, but nodded. Edward led her to the balcony, where the Christmas tree still glowed softly in the fading afternoon light. Sophia followed them, still clutching the picture frame with Leah's photo, as if it were a precious treasure she needed to protect. The sky was darker now, the low, heavy clouds forming a grey blanket over the city. Edward stopped at the edge of the balcony and pointed to the sky, his eyes searching for something in the thick clouds. The weather forecast said there's a chance, a tiny one, of something extraordinary happening today, something that hasn't happened in New York City in decades. He paused, taking a deep breath. Snow. The word hung in the air between them. Leah almost laughed. The idea seemed so absurd. Snow? In New York? Edward, that's impossible. He shrugged, a half smile touching his lips. Almost impossible, but not entirely. The conditions are perfect. The temperature has dropped dramatically. The meteorologists are saying if it happens, it will be historic. He turned to look at her directly, his dark eyes intense. I believe in miracles, especially today, especially now. Sophia tugged on Leah's sleeve, making quick, excited signs about wishes, about Christmas magic, about how in the story they read, impossible things happened when you truly believed. The hope in the girl's eyes was so pure, so intense, that Leah felt her heart ache even more. Leah's phone rang, cutting through the moment like a blade. It was Marianne. I'm here. I'm parked in front of the building. Can you come down? I miss you, friend. Can't wait to catch up on the road. Reality hit hard like a cold wave. It was over. It was really over. There was no more delaying. Leah looked at Edward and Sophia, memorizing every detail of their faces, trying to engrave this moment in her memory forever. I have to go, she said, her voice breaking despite every effort to keep it steady. My friend is waiting. She's downstairs. I can't... Sophia threw herself against her before she could finish the sentence, hugging her waist with desperate force. The girl's silent sobs shook her small body, and Leah felt each tremor like a stab wound. Edward took a step forward, as if to intervene, but stopped, his fists clenched at his sides, the pain clear on his face. Leah knelt slowly, getting to Sophia's level, holding the girl's face in both hands. Tears streamed freely down Sophia's cheeks, and Leah used her thumbs to gently wipe them away. Listen, my love, listen carefully. I love you so much, more than words can say. You are the most special, bravest, most amazing child I have ever known, and I will come back. This isn't goodbye forever. It's just a see you later, I promise. She made the signs as she spoke, her hands moving with the fluency she had developed, each gesture laden with emotion. Sophia finally let go, but she took Leah's hand and placed it over her own heart, pressing it there hard. Then she took Edward's hand and did the same, placing it over Leah's heart. It was a symbolic, desperate, powerful gesture. She was trying to connect them physically, to create a bond that distance couldn't break. Her small hands trembled as she held theirs together. Leah stood up, her legs feeling weak, and looked at Edward through the tears that now blurred her vision. Take care of her, please, and take care of yourself too. Don't go back to that world of obsessive work. You've learned so much. Don't forget. Edward nodded, but his eyes were shining with unshed tears, his jaw tight. Leah, he said, his voice hoarse and heavy. Are you sure? Absolutely sure this is what you want? That this is what your heart is telling you? Look at me and tell me you really want to leave. Leah opened her mouth to answer, to say yes, that she was sure, that she needed to move on. But the words wouldn't come out. They were stuck in her throat, because the truth was she wasn't sure of anything. Her heart was shattered. Every fiber of her being screamed for her to stay, but her brain insisted that leaving was the sensible decision. That's when it happened. Something impossible. Something magical. A single snowflake fell between them, dancing softly in the air like a feather, reflecting the light from the Christmas tree. Leah blinked, certain she was seeing things, that it was an illusion caused by her tears. But then came another flake, and another, and suddenly, as if the sky had decided to conspire. With them, the air was full of them, thousands of tiny ice crystals falling gently, turning New York City into an improbable and impossible fairy tale scene. Sophia let out a silent cry of absolute joy, her eyes widening in pure wonder. She carefully placed the picture frame on the ground and ran across the balcony with her arms outstretched, spinning, trying to catch the snowflakes in her hands, her mouth open in a huge smile. It was the purest expression of happiness Leah had ever seen on the girl's face. "It's snowing," Leah whispered, her voice full of amazement. "It's actually snowing in New York City. This is impossible, but it's happening." Edward moved closer to her, so close she could feel the warmth of his body contrasting with the chill that was beginning to settle in the air. He took her hand, intertwining his fingers with hers, and she didn't pull away. "I told you," he murmured, his voice low but intense. "Miracles happen, especially on special days, especially when you really need them." He turned to face her, holding both of her hands now. "Leah, don't go, please. I know I have no right to ask this. I know you have your life planned, but don't go, stay. Not for me, not for Sophia, but for you. Because your heart is here. I see it in your eyes. You don't want to leave. You're forcing yourself to do this. So why? Why are you doing this to yourself?" "Edward," Leah began, her voice trembling, "your world and mine are so different. You're a CEO, a millionaire. I'm an educator from a small town. How could that ever work? People will say I'm a gold digger, that I'm taking advantage. And what about the job in Maple Creek? The people who are counting on me. The school director has already made plans. I can't just abandon everything for a feeling, no matter how strong it is, no matter how much I want to." Edward squeezed her hands tighter, taking another step closer. "You wouldn't be abandoning anything. You'd be choosing something different, something better, and who cares what people will say? We know the truth. We know what we feel. As for my world being different from yours, you're completely wrong." He shook his head. "I don't want that world anymore. I don't want to be the man I was a year ago. That man was empty. He was just surviving. I want the world you showed me. A world where what matters is being present, is love, is family, is real connection." He paused, taking a deep breath, and when he spoke again, his voice was thick with raw emotion. "I'm in love with you, Leah, completely, irrevocably, hopelessly in love. And it's not gratitude, no matter how many times you say it. It's not confusion. It's real, deep love. The kind of love I thought I'd never feel again after losing Camilla. But you showed me my heart still works, that I can still love, that I can still be happy." The snow was falling harder now, accumulating on the balcony surfaces, on the furniture, creating a surreal and breathtakingly beautiful scene. The city below was beginning to notice the phenomenon, and even from here they could hear distant exclamations of surprise. Sophia had stopped playing and was watching the two adults with absolute attention, her eyes going from one to the other, the snow landing in her dark hair like tiny diamonds. There was a palpable expectation on her face, a hope so intense it was almost painful to see. Edward continued, his voice gaining urgency, the words tumbling out as if he'd held them in for too long. "I have it all planned, Leah. This isn't a fantasy, not a spur-of-the-moment impulse. The branch in Maple Creek isn't just an idea. It's already being implemented. I've bought land, I've hired architects. I have a team moving there. I can manage everything from there. I can have a more balanced, healthier life. Work fewer hours, be more present for Sophia, for us. You don't have to give up your family. On the contrary, we'd be close to them. You could work at your dream school. I know the director personally. I can explain the situation and still be a part of our lives. We could build something together, a real family, a real life." "What if it doesn't work out?" Leah whispered, her last defense crumbling. "What if you regret it? What if one day you wake up and realize you made a mistake? That I'm not enough?" Edward released one of her hands and gently touched her face, his fingers caressing her cheek with a tenderness that made her tremble. "You are more than enough. You are everything. And as for it not working out, well, life doesn't come with guarantees, Leah. Nothing does. But I'd rather try and fail. I'd rather risk my heart than spend the rest of my life wondering, what if? Wondering what could have been if I'd had the courage to fight for you." Sophia approached slowly, almost in slow motion, as if not wanting to interrupt a sacred moment, but unable to stay away any longer. She stood between them, looking up, her huge eyes going from Leah to her father. Her small hands took both of theirs, trying to join them, pressing them together with all the strength her small body could muster. Then Edward did something unexpected. He knelt beside his daughter, bringing himself to her level, and made some signs to Sophia, asking something that was clearly important. The girl nodded vigorously, her eyes filling with tears and joy at the same time, a huge smile spreading across her face. Edward turned back to Leah, still kneeling in the snow that now covered the balcony floor. "Leah, before you decide, before you leave, I need to ask you something. And I need to ask Sophia too, because this involves all three of us." He signed to the girl as he spoke, including her completely in the conversation. "Sophia, would you like Leah to stay with us, not just as a nanny but as part of our family, as your mother, forever?" Sophia began signing frantically, her hands moving so fast they were a blur, saying yes repeatedly, bouncing with excitement even while kneeling. The tears were rolling down her face, but they were tears of pure hope. Edward looked at Leah again, his eyes pleading. "And now I ask you, Leah, do you want to stay? Do you want to build a life with us? Do you want to be my companion, my partner, the love of my life? Do you want to be Sophia's mother, not on paper, but in your heart? Do you want to wake up every day knowing you have a family that loves you more than anything in the world?" Leah's phone rang again in the living room. It was Marianne, probably wondering why she was taking so long, where she was, if everything was okay. But Leah didn't move to answer it, because suddenly, in that moment, with the snow falling around them like blessings from heaven, with Edward kneeling before her offering his heart, with Sophia looking at her with that burning hope, everything became absolutely clear. The doubts, the fears, the rational worries about class differences and what people would say, it all dissolved like snowflakes on a warm surface. She looked at Edward, at this incredible man who had allowed himself to be vulnerable, who had changed so much, grown so much, learned to love again despite all the pain. And she looked at Sophia, that precious girl who had captured her heart from the first moment, who had taught her so much about patience, love, and resilience. This was her family. This was her place. It didn't matter what made sense on paper. It didn't matter what was rational or planned. Her heart knew the truth. "I want to stay," Leah said, and her voice was firm now, without hesitation, without doubt. "I want to stay with you. I want to be part of this family. I want to build a life here, with you two. Forever." Edward stood up in a swift motion, pulling her into a hug so tight it took her breath away. He kissed her then, softly but deeply, a kiss that sealed a promise, a commitment, a future. The snow fell around them, the world fading away until there was only that moment, that kiss, that love. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathless, huge smiles on their faces, wet with tears and snow. Sophia was watching with a radiant smile, clapping her hands silently. She came closer and hugged both of their legs, creating a circle of three, their family finally complete. And then, in that perfect moment, something even more extraordinary happened, something no one expected, that doctors said might never happen, that Edward had given up hope of ever hearing. Sophia looked up directly at Leah and opened her mouth. For the first time in an entire year, since the terrible accident that took her mother, since the trauma that had locked her in silence, she spoke. The word came out soft but perfectly clear, filled with a love and meaning that transcended any explanation. "Mommy." The world stopped. Leah froze, her heart skipping a beat. Edward froze, his eyes widening in absolute shock. Sophia had spoken. After 12 months of silence, of communicating only, through signs and expressive looks, she had found her voice again. And the first word she chose, the first person she called, was Leah. "Mommy," Sophia repeated, stronger this time, more confident, her eyes shining with joy and discovery. "Mommy, Mommy stayed. Mommy's not leaving." Leah dropped to her knees in the snow, not caring about the cold or the wetness, hugging Sophia so tightly that the girl let out a little laugh. She was sobbing openly now, all the emotions of the day, of months, overflowing at once. Yes, my love, yes, 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 Mommy stayed, Mommy's not leaving. Never again, I promise, I swear. Edward joined the hug, wrapping both of them in his strong arms, the three of them forming a tight circle as the snow continued to fall around them like a magical curtain, isolating them from the rest of the world. Mrs. Rose appeared at the balcony door, drawn by the sounds, and stood there, one hand over her mouth, the other over her heart, crying openly with happiness. She had witnessed everything, from the beginning to this miraculous moment. Sophia didn't stop talking now, the words tumbling out after being dammed up for so long, as if a dam had finally broken. Mommy and Daddy, family, our family, Christmas, snow, look at the snow, Mommy, it's magic. I love you both, don't leave, stay forever. Every word was a miracle, every sound a victory over trauma and pain. Leah kissed the top of the girl's head repeatedly, unable to stop touching her, to confirm that this was real. Edward had tears streaming freely down his face now, not bothering to hide them, all his CEO composure gone, leaving only a desperately grateful father. I love you, Edward said, his voice broken, with emotion. Both of you, my family, my whole life. Leah smiled through her tears, her heart so full it felt like it would burst. I love you too, so much, more than I ever thought it was possible to love. They stayed there for long minutes, holding each other, as the snow transformed the city into something magical and new, creating a world just for them. Leah finally remembered her phone and picked it up with trembling hands. She called Marianne, who answered immediately. Friend, what happened? Is everything okay? Why aren't you coming down? Leah took a deep breath. Marianne, I have to tell you something. I'm not coming. I'm staying in New York. I found my family. I found my place. I'm home. There was a moment of stunned silence, followed by an exclamation of surprise and 1,000 rapid-fire questions. Leah promised to explain everything later, every detail, but for now, she just wanted to be there, in that perfect moment. When she hung up, Edward pulled her close again, kissing her forehead. Thank you for staying, for choosing us, for giving us a second chance at happiness, for making this house a home again. Sophia pulled them both by the hand, leading them back inside the apartment, still talking excitedly about the snow, about Christmas, about how happy she was. The snow was still falling outside, but inside, the warmth of a reunited family, of a true love, was more than enough to ward off any chill. They sat together on the sofa, Sophia in the middle as always, and Mrs. Rose brought hot chocolate for everyone, her hands still shaking with emotion. The Christmas tree glowed softly, the cookies they had made together still graced the table, and everything felt exactly as it should be, as it always should have been. We're going to have an amazing Christmas, Sophia said, her voice still soft but growing in confidence with every word. With snow and presents and cookies and family, our family. We're going to stay together forever, right, Mummy? Right, Daddy? Edward looked at Leah over Sophia's head, and she saw all the love, all the gratitude, all the promise of a shared future reflected in his dark eyes. Yes, he agreed, his voice full of certainty, the best Christmas ever, because we're finally complete. We're finally a real family. As night fell and the snow continued its impossible ballet outside, blanketing New York City in a white coat that no one would ever forget, Leah realized something fundamental about life. Sometimes the best plans are the ones we never make. Sometimes the path that seems safest is actually the emptiest. Sometimes you have to have the courage to throw away the map and follow your heart, even when it means giving up everything you thought you wanted. And sometimes, just sometimes, when you least expect it and need it most, life gives you a miracle, or two, or three. Sophia finally yawned, the exciting and magical day taking its toll. Leah picked her up, cradling her gently against her chest. Time for bed, my love. It was a very special day, wasn't it? The most special day of all. Sophia nodded, her eyes already closing, but before she drifted off completely, she murmured one more time, her voice sleepy, but full of absolute contentment. Mommy stayed. Family forever. Daddy, Mommy, and me, forever and ever." "Yes," Leah whispered, kissing her forehead with infinite tenderness. "Forever. The three of us. A family. Your family." Edward walked them to Sophia's room, helping to tuck the girl into bed, arranging the duvet around her, kissing her head. They stood there for a moment, side by side, watching her sleep, her face peaceful and relaxed, a faint smile touching her lips even in sleep. "It's incredible," Edward whispered, marveling. "After a whole year, a year of doctors, therapists, worries, and she finally spoke, today, because of you. You brought her voice back." Leah shook her head, taking his hand. Love brought her voice back, the love of all of us. She felt like she had a family again. She felt it was safe to open her heart, that it was safe to speak. They left the room silently, leaving the door ajar as Sophia liked. In the living room, Edward pulled Leah into a long, deep hug. "Thank you," he repeated against her hair. "Not just for staying, but for everything. For saving us when we were drowning. For showing me there's still beauty and magic in the world. For teaching me how to be a real, present, connected father. For loving my daughter as if she were your own. For loving me despite all my flaws and complications. For giving me a reason to wake up with hope again." Leah smiled against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "You don't have to thank me. I gained as much as I gave, maybe even more. You gave me a family, a purpose, a love I didn't even know I was looking for, a reason to believe in happy endings." They separated, but Edward kept her hands in his, not wanting to lose contact. "Tomorrow we'll start making real plans," he said, his eyes shining with excitement. "For the move to Maple Creek, for integrating our lives, for the future we're going to build together. But today, tonight, let's just enjoy this moment. This Christmas miracle, this family we've finally found." And so they did. They stayed up late, talking about dreams and hopes, making vague but exciting plans for the future, laughing and crying, still processing everything that had happened on that impossible, perfect day. The snow eventually stopped in the early hours of the morning, but it left its permanent mark, a thin, glistening layer that covered the city. A physical reminder that sometimes, against all odds and predictions, the impossible really does happen. When they finally went to sleep, Leah did not go to the guest room. That was no longer her place, and it never would be again. Her place was here, with her new family, in the heart of this home she had helped bring back to life. On Christmas morning, as the sun rose over a still partially snow-covered New York City, Sophia woke up early, radiant with energy and happiness. She ran into Edward and Leah's room, jumped on the bed between them, and shouted with pure, uninhibited joy, "Good morning, Mommy! Good morning, Daddy! Wake up! It's Christmas, Mary!" "Christmas? Look outside, there's still snow. It's magic. It's the best Christmas in the world." Her voice, that voice they had waited so long to hear again, was like heavenly music. Edward and Leah pulled her into a tight hug, the three of them laughing together, a complete family finally reunited. "Merry Christmas, my love," Leah said, her heart overflowing. "The best Christmas of all." And it truly was. Not because of the expensive gifts under the tree, not because of the elaborate food Mrs. Rose would prepare, but because of the simple, profound fact that they were together. That they were a family. That they had found, against all odds, all differences, all obstacles, a way to each other. The Christmas Eve that should have been a painful farewell had become a glorious beginning. Leah's last day as a nanny had become the first day of her life as a mother and a partner, and a woman who was supposed to leave, who was supposed to follow her carefully laid-out plan, became the mother who stayed forever, the missing piece that completed this family's puzzle.